By far one of the most important aspects of every photograph that we'll ever take is of course light. Without it, photography just simply wouldn't exist. It's even where it gets its name from the ancient Greek meaning light writing. When it comes to landscape photography, light can also be the most frustrating aspect of every single photograph that we make. If you wait around for hours to get that perfect shot, and then just at that important moment the light fails, then we feel like we've lost a day's worth behind the camera. There's no more frustrating time of day for taking photographs when it comes to light than sunrise and sunset. But at least if we've got in our armoury the tools and the knowledge of how to put those photographs into practice, then we'll be some of the way there. So join me in this latest episode of the Basics of Photography from Yorkshire Photo Walks to master the art of capturing that elusive time of the day. It's about 3:30 on an early November afternoon, and with sunset only 30 minutes away, I'm still not entirely sure whether I'm going to get the shot that I'm looking for this afternoon. Such is the unpredictability of sunsets and sunrises. But in this video, despite not being able to tell you when to go out or even where to go out, I'm going to help you with some of the tools of the trade and also some hints and tips when it comes to camera settings. So when you do find the perfect light, you will be really in the zone to take a perfect sunrise or sunset photograph. The first point I'm going to make may seem obvious, but it's one of the most important things when it comes to photographing sunrises and sunsets, and that is to simply check the weather forecast. There's one side of frustration in photography where the weather doesn't do what you're expecting it to do. It's a whole other side of frustration when you just go out blindly and miraculously hope that a cloudy sky is going to clear at the perfect moment, because more often than not it's just simply not going to happen. Another useful tool to have in your arsenal is an app on your smartphone called the Photographer's Ephemeris. What this does is not only tells you the sunrise and sunset time, it also takes in the lie of the land, so you know when you go out you're not going to frustratingly see the sun rise from behind a headland if you're out on Yorkshire's dramatic east coast, or if you're in the Dales you're not going to see it set behind Ingleborough or Pennygent before you've even got your camera out to take the photograph in the first place. Another tool that's absolutely vital for any sort of low light photography is a tripod. If you don't have one of these, you'll find that you're increasing the ISO level all the time and getting increasingly noisy photographs. So if you want to do things properly, then invest in a decent tripod and make sure you've got that stability so you don't get any of that camera movement or unnecessary noise in your photographs. Once you've got all of your vital kit together and you've checked the ephemeris so you know exactly what time the sun's going to rise and set and exactly where it's going to rise and set as well, then the next important piece of advice that I'm going to give you is to get to your location in good time. Another really frustrating aspect of photographing sunrises and sunsets is with sunrises you see the lights start to appear as you're driving across country to get to your location, or in an evening you see the sun start to dip and the colours appearing in the sky, and you think, if only I was there 5 or 10 minutes earlier. My advice is to get there at least an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours, before the time is stated where the sun is going to rise or set. That way you can get all your camera kit set up and relax into taking photographs of this majestic event. Once you've got yourself set up, it's time to think about camera settings, which can be one of the most daunting aspects of any type of photography, never mind a time of day where the light is constantly changing. The first step is to turn any image stabilization that you have either on your camera's lens or in your camera body off. That's because when you're using a tripod it will often have the opposite effect, so it will make photographs look shaky and movementified, for want of a better word, rather than having that stable, fixed, sharp look. So whenever you're on a tripod, not just for sunrises or sunsets, then make sure you have that image stabilization switched off. The next thing to think about is ISO levels. Again, because we're on a tripod, we can keep our ISO relatively low because we've got that stability, and we can rely on longer shutter speeds to achieve longer exposures rather than having to take quick exposures at high ISO levels. So an ISO setting of between 100 and 400 should work perfectly. Another useful thing to do is to set a warming white balance on your camera. This will have the effect of bringing out all the lovely warm colours of sunrises and sunsets. So if you're using presets, then a preset setting of cloudy or shade when it comes to white balance will do a fantastic job. Another thing you can do is set a landscape picture style or control. Now, in many cases these just affect JPEG files, but I often set them on my camera anyway, even if I'm photographing in RAW, which I do most of the time, just to give me an idea of what it looked like and the drama that I'm going to try and get out of the final photograph. Once we've set our white balance ISO and turned that image stabilization off, we can start thinking about our aperture setting. Now, when it comes to landscape photography, the magic numbers when it comes to aperture settings are f8 to f11, and that tends to be no different when it comes to sunrise and sunset photography. Sometimes you may have to increase your aperture, i.e. narrow it down, so increasing the F number. So just in case you've got the full sun in your photograph frame at any point in time. If you've got a lower aperture value, it might just look a bit fuzzy, or maybe just overexpose the photograph too much. In which case, feel free to increase your aperture level to around f16. The last camera setting that we have to think about, and it's almost the most important when it comes to sunrise and sunset photography, is our shutter speed. Now, we've already mentioned that the light is going to be changing constantly as the sun either comes up or goes down, which means that we're going to have to use our ISO and aperture settings as constants, and then use our shutter speed to increase or decrease the time of exposure to make sure that we don't overexpose or underexpose our sunrise and sunset photographs. You can do this by using the exposure meter on your camera. Now, if you're not sure what the exposure meter is or what it does, then please check out my video on manually exposing your photographs, which will help you to get to grips with all things manual mode on the camera. Once you've done that, come back to this point and you'll be back on track for getting those amazing sunrise and sunset photographs. So we're set up and ready to go. the last thing that we need to think about is our composition. How are we going to incorporate this beautiful sunrise or sunset into our photograph? Now, there are a few things to consider when it comes to framing your sunrise or sunset photograph. Now, the first thing that we can consider is what we are photographing within the frame of the shot. Are we just photographing the sun coming up and going down against a really simple landscape? Or are we including something in the frame, like a tree, a hill, or a barn or something if you're in the Yorkshire Dales? In the first instance, I would place the sun at the centre of the frame, because that is the main focal point of the shot that you would like to draw people's eye to. If you've got something of interest in the foreground that you'd like to incorporate into the shot, then place your horizon line towards the centre of the photograph. If you haven't, then maybe move the horizon line down a bit in the photograph to place more emphasis on the lovely colours and everything going on in the sky. If you are including something else in your photograph, then maybe place that on a third at either side of the photograph and place the sun on the opposite third. This will not only give your photograph balance, but it also help people to be drawn to the most important aspects of the shot, i.e. the sun and your secondary subject that you're photographing. Sunset is due around about now. And even though I checked the weather forecast, I checked the ephemeris to know exactly what time I had to be here, and although it's been a spectacularly sunny day today with dappled cloud, it looks like it's going to be like many other of my outings to photograph sunrises and sunsets, where the cloud rolls in just at that vital moment. However, with the hints and tips that I've given you in this video, hopefully next time you go out to take photographs of sunrises and sunsets, you'll not only be a bit more lucky than I've been this afternoon, you'll also have the equipment and knowledge that you need to get an absolutely stonking shot. If you have learned something from this video and you've enjoyed it and you'd like to learn more, then don't forget to subscribe to the Yorkshire Photo Walks YouTube channel and click on that bell icon to be reminded when we post a new video. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram for all of our latest news and photo walk photographs, and don't forget that there's those photo walks themselves as well. Expert photography tuition on short walks through inspirational Yorkshire locations. All of those can be found at yorkshirephotowalks.com. Anyway, I'm going to pack up my equipment now and hope for a sunrise or sunset another day. Hopefully, as I say, when you go out next, you'll be a bit more lucky than I've been. But anyway, thank you very much for watching today. I look forward to catching you again soon. See you later.